I often hear people on the internet say that it isn't worth your time to play the original Half-Life if you didn't already experience it back when it was new. They say that the game, while revolutionary for its time, was improved upon to the point where it won't really stand out to new players. While it's true that Half-Life was the foundation for the modern first-person shooter, there is still value in experiencing this game for the first time, even today. I myself only recently played Half-Life for the first time, and yet I consider it still to be one of the most flawlessly crafted games of all time. And I really do mean crafted. Nothing in the game seems like it's a waste of time. The levels transition into one another seamlessly, so that the Black Mesa facility ends up feeling like an actual place, rather than just a conveniently contrived game world to shoot things in. This is one of the areas where Half-Life is able to excel as a modern game. Moving throughout Black Mesa is logical and smooth. Unlike numerous other games that were released in its wake, Half-Life is able to tell a story simply through the game world. The levels in the game don't exist primarily to serve the action, although they perform that job quite well. Their main purpose is to build a world that is both small in scope, and yet strongly compelling. For a first outing, Half-Life pulls off this incredible feat with remarkable success. But if you're a regular gamer, you're probably thinking that there are other, better, and more modern and technically impressive games that are able to create a compelling game world. And to that extent you'd be right. That, however, is only one of the many ways Half-Life succeeds as a game. One of the things that today's games often fail to capture from Half-Life is its sense of atmosphere. And for all of its technical flaws, the game absolutely oozes atmosphere, to the point where it's practically dripping from Black Mesa's many ceilings. I actually think in this regard that the game's technical limitations serve to enhance the atmosphere. Aside from horror games and the like, which I don't really play at all, I've never felt so alone and hopeless in a video game. Black Mesa feels, in a word, claustrophobic. The tight spaces which comprise Black Mesa make the facility actually seem like it's deep underground, which provides an enormous sense of relief when you eventually reach the surface. The game really masters the feeling of tension, as I felt truly uncomfortable throughout the entirety of Half-Life. It's sci-fi action at the core, but the game at times can feel almost post-apocalyptic. It's hard to explain, but after completing the game, I've realized that it felt like no other game I've ever played, which is reason enough, I think, to try Half-Life out if you've only played the sequels, or have somehow managed to avoid the series entirely. Another point I want to bring up is the story, and how it can be hard to separate it from its successors. At the time of its release, it's important to remember that there wasn't exactly a story to speak of. The only events that truly matter in the first Half-Life are the Resonance Cascade, which is the big explosion at the beginning that introduces the aliens, and the canon decision at the end of working for the G-Man. Everything else you do in the game serves exactly one goal: to escape and survive. Some may take issue with that overly simplistic summary, but almost everyone can agree that just not very much actually happened in Half-Life. It is only through deep inspection of the game that you are able to get a sense of the larger, overall story. Even if you've never played any of the Half-Life games before, you probably know all about Gordon Freeman, what he looks like, and some of the characters he comes to meet. However, none of that applies to the original Half-Life. So if you're like me and only playing it for the first time now, it's impossible not to color the original game by what came after it. You're never going to get the fresh experience of playing Half-Life for the first time, although that's not to say that that's a bad thing. Quite the opposite. I think the Half-Life experience you're likely to get is simply one of the finest that video games have to offer. But no matter how strong the story, atmosphere, and level design are, and they are strong, at the end of the day Half-Life is still a game, and the gameplay will comprise the majority of your experience. This is the main area where Half-Life shows its age. That doesn't mean that the gunplay is awful. In fact, I quite like the sort of middle ground it reaches between the modern, realistic style it founded, and the old, fast-paced Quake and Doom style gameplay that preceded it. It won't bring anything new or exciting to the table if you've been keeping up with the last decade of shooters, but it doesn't have to. If you're playing through or revisiting Half-Life now, it's not because of the gameplay. That doesn't excuse it, of course, but in the grand scheme of things, the shooter aspect of the game does not in any way, shape, or form detract from the excellent world. It's almost ironic, in that Half-Life is remembered for just about everything except the gunplay, which is almost exclusively what you'll be doing. However, in some ways the game can actually feel refreshingly dated. There are some gameplay inclusions that you simply won't find in a modern game. Crouch jumping, which is essential to traversing Black Mesa, is just non-existent in current single-player games. And while most modern gamers will resent the platforming and jumping puzzle sections of Half-Life, they can be appreciated from a world-building point of view. It contributes to the long, exhausting journey motif of the game. The world doesn't revolve around you. You must adapt your traversal strategies to the game world, not the other way around. Of course, when you're playing the game, you're unlikely to share these sentiments, but in my opinion, Half-Life is a game best viewed as a whole, and a greater appreciation for it develops after you finish the game, and you are able to see the big picture. But even for how well Half-Life managed to age, we can't ignore the fact that the game suffers from 1998 visuals. Although now with the release of Black Mesa's Source, that issue can be avoided entirely. But like the gameplay, the graphics shouldn't detract from the sublime experience, even if at times it can be a hindrance to immersion. Like for instance the inclusion of a ridiculous attempt at a scenic vista. The footage I'm showing you here is the original game augmented with the 2001 HD visual graphics pack, which in my opinion makes the game a little bit easier to swallow if the old graphics bother you. Again, this pack wasn't available to gamers at launch, but the exact original experience isn't something that is possible, or even desired. Now even after all of this, you're still probably thinking that the things that make this a great game are done better now. And games are made better now, it's a fact that simply can't be ignored. However, every single sentence of praise I've so far given Half-Life is from a modern gamer's perspective. The fact of the matter is that Half-Life is worth your time. That's the most direct way I can put it. It pulls you in and gives you an amazing experience that is only comparable to games like BioShock and Valve's own Half-Life 2. Games can still learn a lot from the original Half-Life, and with so many modern games failing to even emulate the things that made this game great, it's easy to see why it's still considered one of the best. It is to this day one of the marvels of gaming that games 15 years later should still strive to compare to. In its time, Half-Life set the bar to its absolute highest position, and for what it's worth, I think it still remains as a shining example of what video games can achieve.